Hello, hopefully you've taken some time to go through and complete the lab, and here is the answer. So, at least it's my answer anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up Vital, and I'm going to make a new little query window. And I'll save my work to get started. And I want to save it, Python class, I think I'll call it lab21. Okay, that's a start. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my instructions. I'm going to copy that out. I'm going to paste it in my little script file here. And then I'm going to use that feature where you can use the triple quoted string to kind of make a nice little block comment. Okay, I think that'll work. Actually, maybe I'll just... Oh man, that is just so beautiful I can hardly stand it. Wouldn't bother. Okay, so now I've got my little script ready to go for the lab. Actually, you know, it wouldn't be bad is if I go ahead and put in my little note here that my name. And cool, that'll work. Next, let's put some code together. So I want to go ahead and create a script using idle, add two numbers together. Right. So step one, I don't know, get some variables together. How about, do I want integers? Do I want floating points? Let's use floating points. Floating points can have decimal points, values. So floating point, first number. And I'll set it to, like, I don't know, 1. And floating point number, 2, I'll set to value, that looks like 45 because that's what I hit. And then I want to be able to add them together and print it on the screen. Okay, print. Now I'm just making these names up as I go, guys. You could have called it N1 for number 1. You could have called it number 1 or first number, second number. You just make stuff up. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to, always use the same naming convention. I do like the prefix on there. It could be that one is N1 and the other one's number 2, but I think it would be a good idea to keep things consistent. So I don't know, maybe I'll come up with that. It doesn't really matter much, but consistency is important. Okay, let's see if this thing works. I think it's going to work out just fine, but I'll never know until I try. Awesome. Now, I want to make this a little bit nicer, so I'm going to start adding in a few features. One thing is I want to get some input from the human. So I'll go ahead and say input, enter the first number. Okay, and that will allow me to get the first number. And I'll go through, oops, hey, get back here. And I'll cut, or copy rather, and paste. There we go. Enter the second number. And then I'll add those puppies together. Let's see how it looks. And the first number, okay, 2 and 5. Wait a second, 2 and 5 are definitely not 25. What happened here? Well, it turns out that the input command is coming in as a string of characters. And when that happens, the string of characters are concatenated together. And that's because Python is automatically choosing the data types for us. Well, there's a number of ways we can fix this. You may have seen it in the chapter, you may have seen it on the internet when you're doing some of the research, etc. But Anyway, one way is to just actually go ahead and convert it over to a floating point like this. You tell Python that you want to take the data coming in as a string and convert it to a float. Now when you do, these will be floating point values and it will act accordingly. Cool. Another way to do it would have been to go through and just change this over to str, because you know it's coming in as a string. And that way it's obvious to anybody that comes back and reads your code later. And just go ahead and convert to a float temporarily when you print it out. That'll force the concatenation. So float. I need to do them individually, otherwise it'll be a floating point on one side and a string on the other side. So I want to actually go through and say float. Oh man, my typing. Okay, I think it's going to work now. This is another way you could have done it. Okay, that's working. And either one of those would have worked fine. Now, yet another way is you could go through and put in floating point sum. And that would be something that you would assign a value to. So I could take this code and cut it. And now I'd have just print out the floating point value of sum. And it works the same way, it's just another way of doing it. Any of those are certainly acceptable, but I might want to make it a little bit nicer as far as what it outputs too. So I could go through and say, okay, the sum of, oops, I want to put quotes around it. The sum of str, oops, how about we put a comma here? str n1, comma, and str n2, comma, is a floating point. Actually, I think I'll put a colon there to make it look nice. The floating point sum. Okay, I think this is going to work. Now, these symbols are going to automatically give me spaces and concatenate everything for me. And with any luck, it's also going to convert this over for me as a string. We're going to find out. Only way to know is to give it a shot or have a great memory. And hey, look, it worked. I like it when it actually works. So 4 and 6 is 10. Yahoo! If you chose to, you could have actually used concatenation operator. That would be fine too. But remember that in order to make it look nice, it's your responsibility to add in extra spaces and the like. So the sum of, I want a space there, I want a space there and here, and I need a space there and a space there. And let's see if that one works. Yep, that's getting pretty. Yes, thank you. Run it again. Okay, 43 and 5. Uh-oh. You can't implicitly convert the float object to a string. So with the commas, it did it for us automatically, but with this, I have to convert it back to a string. So I'll go ahead and say str. You don't actually have to word string out. You can use a shortcut version. and that will do the concatenation. Choices. All of those choices would have been fine when you're doing the lab. So just lots of different ways that it could be done. I think this looks pretty decent. That's probably a good enough to end the video on. Hopefully this made sense to you, and you might want to go back and just kind of adjust your program to make it look nicer if you just do the bare bones, or just think to yourself, hey, mine looks better than Randall's. That's fine too. It may well be. Okay, that's it for this lab. Hopefully you got something out of it, and let's move on to the next thing, which is what we're doing next. We're taking a look at value types and reference types. I'll see you there.